It was one of those quiet evenings when everything felt perfectly in place, the kind of calm that almost fools you into thinking life is steady, predictable. The lamp cast a warm circle of light across my wedding checklist, each note a tiny promise of the future I thought I was building. Ethan's tablet rested beside me, borrowed earlier to confirm a florist payment. When it buzzed, I didn't think much of it. I just glanced at the screen. The message preview glowed in the dim room. Can't wait to see you tonight again. I'll sneak out after she falls asleep. Lily. For a second, I couldn't breathe. The words didn't make sense at first, like reading a language I used to know but had forgotten. Lily, my best friend, my maid of honor, the woman who toasted to my happiness, who helped me pick my dress. My hand went cold against the tablet. That tiny red heart felt like a knife slipped between my ribs. I told myself it had to be a joke, a misunderstanding. But curiosity is cruel, and I kept scrolling, message after message, inside jokes, plans, even a photo. Ethan's hand tangled in Lily's hair as they kissed in his car. My heart didn't just break. It organized the pieces, cataloged every lie, and then it went silent. The kind of silence that means something inside you has changed forever. I didn't cry. Not yet. Instead, I stared at the screen until the letters blurred and my reflection appeared. Pale, frozen, unrecognizable. I thought of every moment I'd trusted him. The nights he said he was working late, the mornings he left early, the weekends he seemed too tired to talk. Each memory suddenly rearranged itself into a different story, a truer one, the kind where I was the audience, not the partner. I heard the front door open, his footsteps, steady, confident, familiar. I closed the tablet just as he walked in, smiling like nothing in the world could touch us. "Hey, babe, still awake?" he said, setting his keys down. "You should rest. Tomorrow's rehearsal." I looked at him and wondered how he could sound so soft, so normal, with her lipstick probably still on his shirt. "You're right," I answered quietly. "Tomorrow's a big day." He studied my face for a moment. "Everything okay?" he asked. I smiled, slow, deliberate, the kind of smile that hides more than it reveals. "Perfect," I said. "I can't wait for everyone to see how perfect we are." He seemed satisfied with that, kissed my forehead, told me he loved me. I whispered it back, tasting the bitterness of every syllable. He had no idea the stage was already set, and the script had just changed. After he went to bed, I stayed sitting there, staring at the blank television screen that reflected the hollow calm of my own face. The house felt different now, colder, like it belonged to strangers pretending to love each other. I could hear him breathing down the hall, steady and innocent, as if betrayal could ever be peaceful. The air smelled faintly of his cologne and something sharp, like deceit. It made my stomach twist. I walked to the window, opened it slightly, and let the night air fill the room. The wind carried the scent of rain, clean, almost forgiving. But forgiveness wasn't something I had left to give. My mind started sorting through every detail, every opportunity, every way I could make this right. Not for him, for me, for the woman who refused to be made small by someone else's lies. My calm wasn't surrender, it was strategy. When I finally lay beside him, he shifted in his sleep and reached for me. His arm fell over my waist like nothing had changed. But everything had. I watched his face in the dark, memorizing the peace he didn't deserve. "You'll marry me, Ethan," I thought. "You'll wear the ring. You just won't enjoy the honeymoon." And as sleep crept over me, it wasn't heartbreak I felt. It was purpose. Morning came wrapped in sunlight and pretense. I smiled at my reflection as I fixed my hair, almost convincing myself it was just another day. The rehearsal was hours away, and everyone expected me to be glowing, grateful, hopelessly in love. And I was, just not in the way they thought. I was in love with my own composure, with the way I could hold a secret that heavy and still look flawless in silk and pearls. At the church, everything unfolded like a photograph. Laughter, champagne, Lily's bright voice cutting through the air like the sound of something fragile pretending to be whole. She hugged me, called me sis, and told me how excited she was for tomorrow. Her perfume lingered, too sweet, too familiar. When she wasn't looking, Ethan brushed a strand of hair from her face. Quick, careful. Not quick enough. I saw. I should have been angry, but what I felt was colder. Precision. The kind that makes you stand taller, smile wider, and plan deeper. The world thought I was the happiest bride alive, and maybe in a twisted way I was. Because I finally knew the truth. And knowledge, that was my power. They had built a secret world behind my back, but tomorrow, that world would burn in front of everyone they loved. During lunch, Lily sat beside me, bubbling with excitement, her laughter echoing louder than it should. I watched her hands, manicured, trembling just slightly when Ethan spoke. Guilt, I thought, always betrays itself in the smallest gestures. "You've been such a good friend through all this," I said, turning toward her with a smile I'd practiced in mirrors. She looked startled, then relieved. "Oh, come on! You know I'd do anything for you," she answered. Anything. I wondered if she realized what that word truly meant now. I leaned closer, close enough that my voice barely reached her. "Yes," I whispered, letting my smile linger. "I know exactly how far you'd go." The color drained from her face for a second, a tiny flicker of panic that she covered with a nervous laugh. "You're such a tease," she said, pretending not to understand. But she did. She absolutely did. And for the first time in days, I felt the smallest spark of satisfaction. Ethan joined us, oblivious, asking if we were talking about tomorrow's vows. I met his eyes, steady and soft. "Just friendship," I said. He smiled and kissed my cheek, unaware he was kissing the calm before his own storm. The rehearsal ended with applause and champagne, but in my head, the final act was already written. That night, I made one call, to the videographer, and asked for a private addition to the wedding playlist. That evening, I sat at my vanity removing my earrings, watching my reflection the way one might study a stranger. My face looked calm, but my eyes, they told another story. I wasn't the same woman who found that message. I was someone sharper, quieter, someone who'd learned how to weaponize grace. The phone call with the videographer replayed in my mind, my voice steady, my tone polite. "Yes," I'd said. "I'd like to surprise my fiancé during the reception. Something unforgettable." Ethan texted me later, "You were amazing today. I'm so lucky to have you." I stared at the words for a long time before replying with a single heart emoji, the same one Lily had used. It felt poetic, almost theatrical. Maybe he'd never noticed the irony, but I didn't send it for him. I sent it for me, a reminder that his language of lies would soon be turned into truth's confession. A different kind of love story told on screen. Before bed, I slipped into the dress I'd wear tomorrow, just for a moment. The satin whispered against my skin, heavy with meaning. I looked at my reflection again and smiled. He would never see me coming, not the woman who looked at him lovingly across candlelight, not the bride he thought he'd fooled. Tomorrow I'd give him the wedding of his dreams, and the nightmare he'd never wake from. The morning light poured through the curtains like a spotlight, soft, golden, almost mocking. The room smelled of roses and hairspray, a mix of beauty and artifice. My mother's voice floated in from the hallway, reminding me to eat something. "Big day," she said. She had no idea how right she was. I looked at the gown hanging by the window, pure white, untouched. I used to dream of this moment as the start of forever. Now, it felt more like the final scene of a play I no longer wanted to star in. When I stepped into the dress, the silk clung to my skin like a secret. Every zip, every button, every pinned curl became part of my armor. The mirror showed a radiant bride, serene and flawless, the kind of woman people whispered about admiringly. "She's glowing," they'd say. And I was, but not from joy. It was from control. The kind that burns slow and steady, feeding on truth. My mother hugged me tightly. I'm so proud of you, sweetheart. I smiled. You will be, Mom. Just not for the reason you think. At the church, cameras flashed, laughter echoed, and every guest seemed wrapped in their own fairy tale version of love. Ethan looked perfect in his suit, charming, confident, rehearsed. When our eyes met, he smiled the smile he always used to disarm me. This time, I met it with one of my own, polished, practiced, and just as hollow. The world saw a bride in love. I saw a man walking straight into his own confession. The music began. Violins, soft and reverent, the kind that makes people cry even if they don't know why. I walked down the aisle on my father's arm, every step deliberate, steady, like the beat of a countdown. Faces turned toward me with awe. They saw love, devotion, the fairy tale. Only I knew it was theater. Ethan's eyes shone when he saw me. For a moment, I wondered if he actually believed in what he'd built, or if lies just came that easily to him. When I reached him, he took my hands, warm and steady. The priest's voice echoed through the church, talking about trust, fidelity, forever. The irony nearly made me laugh. Ethan repeated his vows with practiced sincerity, looking right into my eyes as if I were still the woman who didn't know. When he said, "I do," I felt nothing, just a quiet click inside, like the final piece of a plan locking into place. Then it was my turn. Everyone leaned in, waiting for the trembling bride voice, the emotional moment. I smiled, took a breath, and said softly, "I do." But in my mind, it sounded different. It sounded like I'm done. The crowd erupted in applause. The organ sang. He kissed me like the world was his, and I let him, because soon it wouldn't be. Soon, he'd see exactly what it means to love a woman who knows everything. The reception shimmered under strings of golden lights. Laughter, clinking glasses, and the soft hum of a love song filled the air. I moved among the guests like a queen at her coronation, smiling, thanking, playing my role flawlessly. Every compliment, "You two are perfect," "You're glowing," "He adores you," landed like a whisper from another world. They couldn't see it. They couldn't see the storm underneath the silk and champagne. Ethan was in his element, charming the crowd, pulling Lily into group photos with me as if fate had written her into our story. Her smile trembled, her laughter just a little too loud. I almost admired her courage, standing next to me in white lace, pretending her guilt was grace. I raised my glass when Ethan toasted to forever, and he looked so proud, so sure he had everyone fooled. I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. As the evening softened, the lights dimmed slightly. The DJ approached me quietly. "Mrs. Parker," he said, "is it time for your special presentation?" I smiled, that same calm, deliberate smile I'd worn since the night of the discovery. "Yes," I whispered. "It's time." He nodded, and as I watched him walk toward the control booth, my heart didn't race. It steadied. Everything was unfolding exactly as I'd planned. I took the microphone with a steady hand, the silk of my dress brushing against the stand as the music faded. The crowd hushed instantly. The bride had something to say. "Before we continue celebrating," I began, my voice smooth, measured, "I want to share something special. A small video montage, a tribute to love, loyalty, and the truth." People smiled, glasses lifted, a few even clapped. Ethan wrapped an arm around my waist, utterly unaware that this was the last time he'd ever touch me. The lights dimmed. A soft melody began. The first images flashed on the screen. Photos of Ethan and me, laughing, holding hands, kissing beneath the same golden lights now hanging above us. I heard sighs, laughter, the sweet hum of approval. Then, without warning, the tone shifted. A text message appeared. That same message. "Can't wait to see you tonight again." The room went still. Another photo followed. Ethan and Lily in his car. The air thickened, sharp as glass. I didn't move. I just watched the truth unspool in high definition. Every secret, every lie, projected larger than life. Gasps spread like fire. Lily's face turned pale, her hand over her mouth. Ethan's arm slipped away from my waist. He whispered my name, barely breathing it. Clara. But I didn't turn to him. I kept my eyes on the screen, the evidence flickering in the dark. My revenge, beautifully edited and timed to perfection. When the screen went black, there was silence. That heavy kind of silence that only comes when everyone has seen too much. Then came the murmurs, the gasps, the clinking of glasses being set down mid-sip. I could feel 100 eyes darting between Ethan, Lily, and me, trying to piece together the impossible. Ethan took a step toward me, his face drained of color. "Clara, please," he said, his voice trembling. "Let me explain." I turned the microphone back on, my hand steady as ever. "Explain," I said softly, almost kindly. "No need. You already said everything. To her." My words fell into the room like stones into still water, rippling through every whisper. Behind him, Lily was frozen, tears streaking down her makeup, mascara bleeding into the lace she'd worn so proudly. Someone in the back whispered, "Oh my God," and that was when the first flash from a guest's phone went off. Ethan reached for me again, desperation clawing at his voice. "Clara, I made a mistake. I love you." I stepped back. "Love?" I echoed, tilting my head. "That's not love, Ethan. That's performance. And tonight, I just gave you the audience you deserve." A murmur of shock spread through the guests. I smiled, not out of cruelty, but closure. "I always dreamed of a wedding people would remember forever," I said, my voice low, controlled. "I just didn't realize the truth would make it unforgettable." For a moment, no one moved. The lights flickered back on, revealing a room divided between pity and disbelief. Lily sank into a chair, shaking, her bouquet falling to the floor like a broken promise. Ethan stood in the center, stunned, mouth opening and closing without sound. I felt strangely detached, like I was watching someone else's life collapse in slow motion. But it wasn't pain I felt. It was release. A quiet kind that doesn't need applause to feel victorious. I handed the microphone to the DJ, straightened my veil, and smoothed the front of my gown. "Thank you everyone for coming," I said, my voice calm, almost gentle. "Dinner's still being served. Don't let my honesty ruin your appetite." The crowd didn't know whether to look at me or look away. I gave them mercy, a smile, small and soft, and then I walked past Ethan. He reached out, but his fingers only caught air. He'd lost his bride long before tonight. The cold night air hit my face as I stepped outside, the bouquet still in my hand. Somewhere inside, the music started again, awkward and broken. I didn't look back. The stars were sharp above me, the sky wide and clean, like freedom. My heels clicked against the pavement with the rhythm of finality. I whispered to myself, I gave him everything he wanted. Now I'll give myself what I deserve. Tomorrow, there'd be no vows, no guilt, no pretending. Just peace, and the beginning of my own story. The next morning, the sun rose without ceremony, as if the world had already forgotten the night before. I didn't cancel the honeymoon. Why should I? I'd earned the rest, maybe even the redemption. So I packed my bags, slipped off my ring, and left a note on the kitchen counter that simply read, "Enjoy explaining this one." The airport felt strangely peaceful, full of strangers who didn't know my name, my story, or my victory. I liked it that way. The flight was long, quiet, and mercifully uneventful. I looked out the window and watched clouds drift below me, wondering how something so soft could separate one life from another. When the plane touched down on the island, the air was thick with salt and warmth. Paradise, the place we were supposed to start forever. I smiled at the irony. Forever had already ended, but mine was just beginning. At the resort, a man at the front desk greeted me with a polite smile. "Honeymoon trip?" he asked, glancing at the reservation. I hesitated, then nodded. "Something like that," I said, returning his smile. "I just married off two liars, to their own guilt." He laughed, not quite sure if I was joking. I was, and I wasn't. As I walked toward my suite, the ocean breeze wrapped around me like forgiveness, though I didn't need it anymore. The ocean became my companion. Mornings started with the hiss of waves curling onto the shore. Evenings ended with the hum of cicadas beneath the fading sun. I spent hours walking barefoot on the sand, tracing lines that the tide would erase within minutes, a quiet reminder that nothing, not even heartbreak, is meant to last forever. I'd been so used to taking care of someone else's happiness that I'd forgotten what my own even looked like. Here, it finally began to take shape. Each day, I ignored the dozens of missed calls lighting up my phone. Ethan's name, Lily's name, flashing over and over like ghosts desperate to be acknowledged. I didn't answer. I didn't block them either. Silence was my message. I read some of their texts once. Apologies, excuses, promises to talk things through. It was almost laughable. You can't talk your way out of betrayal. It's not a misunderstanding. It's a decision. And they'd both made theirs. One night I sat at the bar, the smell of coconut and lime mixing with the sea air. The bartender smiled as he handed me a glass of champagne. "Celebrating something?" he asked. I thought for a moment, then raised my glass. "Yes," I said. "My freedom." He laughed softly, but to me, it wasn't a joke. Every sip tasted like release, crisp, cold, and earned. The kind of peace that doesn't ask for permission. That night, I sat on the balcony wrapped in a white robe, my feet propped on the railing, a glass of champagne in hand. The ocean shimmered under the moonlight, endless and forgiving. Somewhere below, couples laughed, clinking glasses, whispering their promises to each other. Once that sound would have pierced me. Now it barely brushed the edges of my peace. I didn't lose love. I lost illusion. And in its absence, I found something purer. Myself. The air was warm, the kind that clings to your skin and makes you feel alive again. I thought about the girl I'd been just days ago. Meticulous, trusting, naive enough to believe in forever. She was gone now, replaced by someone softer in heart, but sharper in spirit. I didn't hate Ethan or Lily anymore. Hatred required energy, and I had none left to spare. Indifference, though, that was power. It meant they couldn't touch me anymore. As the first hint of dawn painted the horizon, I raised my glass to the rising light. "To truth," I whispered, "and to every woman who learns it the hard way." The waves responded in their slow applause, the world quietly approving of my rebirth. Tomorrow I'd fly home, not as someone abandoned, but as someone reborn. I had survived deceit and turned it into liberation, and for the first time in a long while, I was free to breathe without pretending. Months passed before I realized I hadn't thought about him in weeks. It's strange how something that once defined every breath can eventually dissolve into background noise. My ring finger was bare now, the faint tan line fading like a scar finally healing. I'd rented a small office space downtown, nothing fancy, just sunlight, white walls, and potential. That's where New Beginnings Weddings was born. The irony wasn't lost on me. I used to plan my own wedding around lies. Now I helped others build theirs around truth. Word spread quickly. My calm presence, my honesty, people trusted me. Brides came in nervous, hopeful, sometimes broken. They told me their stories in whispers, like confessions, and I listened, never judging, just understanding. I'd been where they were. I knew the tremor in their voices, the doubt behind their smiles. Helping them was more than work. It was therapy, not for them, but for me. One afternoon, a young woman sat across from me, twisting her engagement ring nervously. "I don't know if I can trust him," she said softly, eyes full of worry. I smiled, that quiet, knowing smile I'd mastered. "Then don't just trust words," I told her. "Trust actions. They never lie." She looked at me, surprised, maybe even comforted. And for the first time, I saw myself reflected not in pain, but in purpose. There was something healing about watching other women step into their beginnings, the dress fittings, the laughter, the nervous tears. I'd stand quietly in the background, making sure every petal, every candle, every moment looked exactly as they dreamed. But beneath it all, I was building something more than weddings. I was building stories, honest ones. I'd learned that love could still be beautiful, but only when built on truth, not illusion. That realization didn't make me cynical, it made me grounded. Sometimes I'd drive by the old church, the one where my life unraveled and rewrote itself in the same hour. It looked peaceful now, untouched by memory. I'd smile to myself, not in bitterness, but gratitude. That was where I stopped living for appearances. That was where I was reborn. People think strength is loud, dramatic, full of anger, but real strength, the kind that lasts, is quiet. It's the choice to move forward without needing anyone to notice. In the evenings, when I closed the shop, I'd make myself tea and sit by the window, watching couples pass by hand in hand. The sight no longer stung. Love wasn't the enemy, blindness was. I'd been blind once, but now I could see everything with startling clarity, the way truth reshapes a heart, the way peace doesn't need witnesses. Happiness, I realized, wasn't a fairy tale ending. It was a steady heartbeat that belonged only to me. One morning, as I arranged peonies for a client, I noticed the way sunlight poured through the window. Soft, golden, the same light that once fell on my wedding dress. Only now it didn't remind me of what I lost. It reminded me of what I gained. A woman came in to confirm her final details, her hands trembling just slightly. "I'm scared," she admitted, voice cracking. "What if he's not who I think he is?" I smiled gently, recognizing the tremor, the uncertainty, the version of myself she didn't know she mirrored. I walked her to the mirror and said, "Then make sure you are who you think you are, because if they betray you, that's on them. But how you rise afterward, that's yours." She nodded, tears glinting in her eyes, and when she left, I felt something lift, as if every word I'd once swallowed had finally found its way into light. Healing, I realized, wasn't loud or dramatic. It was quiet, graceful, almost invisible, like forgiveness whispered only to yourself. That evening, I locked up, slipped off my shoes, and stood barefoot on the cool tile floor, breathing in the scent of fresh flowers. My hand brushed over my ring finger, still bare, still free. I thought of Ethan, of Lily, of the woman I used to be, and smiled. Not with anger, with peace. "I gave him his perfect day," I murmured, turning off the lights one by one, "and I took back my perfect life."